In time, we built up a herd of 8 sows and became entitled to a grant from the Department of Agriculture to buy our own boar. This was a considerable relief to me, for whatever about escorting an in-heat sow a mile or so down the Bawn Lane, escorting her back was most challenging, except for Mrs. Nutt, who didn't need anyone to escort her anywhere. The sows slept together most of the time. They had the run of the long field, which in short time was all but ruined because of their rooting. Father decided this had to be stopped. His solution was to wring their snouts. This entailed looping each sow's top jaw with a slender rope behind her tusks and tying the rope to a pole set in concrete. Then inserting 2 rings into the soft tissue that separated the nostrils by squeezing them in with a pliers-like instrument. The squeals that day were the most piercing sounds I'd ever heard, but there was no more rooting, because nose-ringed pigs caused pain anytime they came in contact with the ground. When a sow was about to farrow, she would be moved into her own house and yard. "Can I stay up with Mrs. Nutt tonight on my own?" I asked my father. I'd stayed up with farrowing sows before, but it was just to keep my father company. She was restless, and we knew she would give birth that night. "She's a huge belly on her, and it'll be a big litter. I'm afraid you'd fall asleep and that you might let her lie on them," said my father as we both looked in over the timbered wall that separated the farrowing crate from the rest of the shed. Mrs. Nutt grunted as she looked back up at us. "Ah, you know that won't happen. Didn't you show me what to do?" "Well, okay. I'd set the clock for 6 and come out to check how things are before I go to work." So I took on the responsibility of bringing a litter of piglets into the world while the rest of the family went to bed. I tuned the transistor radio to 208 Radio Luxembourg, which I normally listen to under blankets. Around 1 o'clock, the first little piglet arrived, and immediately jumped up and spent several moments trying to re-enter the passage from which he had just emerged. I deftly picked him up and placed him under the infrared light in the corner. I turned off the radio and settled myself for a serious night of birthing. I waited and waited, but no other piglet appeared. Several times I was about to go into the house to waken my father, but I was afraid they'd all come together if I left my vigil. Father appeared sometime before 6. When he saw the single piglet, he started to grill me intensively. I quickly realised he suspected I'd fallen asleep and that all piglets bar one were crushed and possibly buried by me. The more I implored him to believe me, the more suspicious he became. He thought this might have something to do with me listening to the transistor radio. It took years for him to stop mentioning it. I'm not sure if he ever came around to believing I hadn't fallen asleep listening to that rotten pop music